What's going on YouTube? Keith Moore Jr. here, and today I'm going to be giving my fight prediction for the Errol Spence Jr. versus Danny Garcia match. Both fighters made weight, so we are ready to have this fight tomorrow. Now, for those of you all who may not know, I'm a huge Errol Spence Jr. fan, and I have been waiting for him to make his return back to boxing. When he got in that car accident last year, I was very scared that he may never box again, but to see him back, to see him healthy, I am extremely excited. So something I noticed leading up to this fight, one, Errol Spence was extremely focused, which in the past you heard criticisms about Errol, partying, drinking, things like that. I don't know Errol, so I don't know how true that is. He has said some things about him not being as focused in the past and things like that. So I'm glad that he was fully locked in for this fight. And during the camp and watching him train and stuff, I noticed that his physique looks very comparable to when he fought Kell Brook, which I think is a great sign, because that tells me that he took his strength and conditioning very serious for this fight. And when I go back and look at like the Sean Porter fight that he had last year, which was his last fight, his body, yeah, he made weight, but his physique was not the best I've ever seen. Like, he wasn't all ripped up. He looked like he was in a training camp to more so lose weight rather than prepare for a fight. He was appearing very soft. Granted, he still won that fight because, he's just on another level in my opinion. But I could tell that in his physique, he was getting, comfortable being at the top of the welterweight class, and he was not taking his training as serious. Now, for this fight, when I saw the weigh-in, like even before the weigh-in, leading up to it, when they do the whole thing where they cover the training camp, I'm like, yeah, Errol is ready. But even at the weigh-in, where he's lean, he's ripped, he's still muscular, so that tells me he didn't have to lose a bunch of weight in a short amount of time and he's weight drained. No, he looks like he's ready to go, and then even tomorrow when he carbs up, he's going to look even better. So that was the first sign to me that his strength and conditioning was on point. Now, Danny Garcia, he's a great fighter. Well, I won't say Danny Garcia is a great fighter. I will say Danny Garcia is a good fighter, but he is one of the type fighters at the welterweight division. Now, something that a lot of people have been talking about is Errol going to be the same after his car accident last year? Now, as far as I'm concerned, Errol says he's good. Derek James says Errol is good. And the doctors that Errol went to see says he's good. Oh, last but not least, Errol's sparring partners said he's good. So all of these self-proclaimed doctors on the internet that are speculating that Errol is not fully himself, we'll find out tomorrow, but I'm going to take it directly from the source's mouth and people that are close to the source. If Errol wasn't good, I do not think he would be fighting Danny Garcia. So take it how you want it, but if the doctor said he's good, he didn't have any brain damage, like, it's a lot of speculation on how Errol's going to look. I'm thinking that Errol's going to look like the Errol Spence that fought Kell Brook. That's what I'm betting on, because his strength and conditioning is on point. He's been locked in. And then another motivating factor, I feel like it could or couldn't be, but he just recently had a son. So him having that accident last year and then putting everything into perspective that he's gone through over this last year, I think that a focused Errol Spence is a dangerous Errol Spence. And the only person at welterweight I see giving him a really good fight is Terrence Crawford. I just think he's on another level than Danny Garcia. In my opinion, he does everything better than Danny Garcia. Like boxes, if he needs to bang it out in a dogfight, he's going to do that better than Danny Garcia. Now, Danny Garcia is a great counterpuncher. Yes, I will admit that. But when Danny Garcia fights other top welterweights, what does he do? He loses. So, yeah, he's a great counterpuncher, but Errol Spence is an elite fighter. So when Danny Garcia has fought other elite fighters like a Sean Porter or a Keith Thurman, yeah, he caught him. It's boxing. You're going to get caught. But he didn't knock them down or knock them out or anything. So, yeah, when him and Errol fight tomorrow, yeah, Earl's going to get caught with counter punches. It's boxing. But do I think he's going to knock Errol down or knock Errol out? No chance. I don't see it happening. Errol can take a punch. Because people are talking about Danny Garcia's counterpunching like Errol doesn't have a chin. Like Errol can't take a punch. If Danny Garcia lands a big punch on Errol, Errol's going to come right back at him and land a big punch on Danny. It's really that simple to me. It's not like he's going to hit Errol and then Errol's going to, take off running. If Danny wants to bang it out, which I don't think Danny wants to do with Errol, then Errol will gladly welcome that. But, Errol's past two fights, even before the fights, he was saying that he wanted to prove a point. So when I say the past two fights, I'm talking about Mikey Garcia and Sean Porter. Mikey Garcia, everybody was like, Errol has to bully him to beat him. Errol went in there and showed that he's a way better boxer than Mikey Garcia. Then Sean Porter fight. They were like, well, Errol has to box in order to beat Sean Porter. He can't, stay inside and bang with Sean Porter. Errol fought Sean Porter's fight. He stayed inside and he banged the entire fight. Now for this fight, based on where Errol has been saying, he's going to listen to his coach. Rather than fight the other guy's fight, he's going to do what Derrick James tells him to do. Derrick James, world-class trainer, in my opinion, should be trainer of the year. He's going to have Errol more than prepared for the counter punches that Danny Garcia is going to throw. And it's not going to be anything that catches Errol by surprise. Especially with Errol coming inside and throwing body shots at Danny, it's going to be very difficult for Danny to just time Errol with a completely clean punch. Errol does not come in reckless. He has great defense. I don't care what anyone says. If he didn't have great defense, he wouldn't be at the position he's at now. So people are saying this like Errol is a C-class fighter, talking about Danny might catch him. Like, no. I know we haven't seen Errol Spence fight in over a year, but please put some respect on his name. He's not just about to go in there recklessly and get caught by Danny Garcia. And that's not taking anything away from Danny Garcia. He's tough as nails. And something else that people are not bringing up is Errol Spence has power too. Errol Spence can crack too. So when, I would say if, but I'll say when, it's boxing. Danny's going to catch Errol with the left hook, a counter punch. It's boxing. He's going to hit him with it. But when he does, Errol's going to come right back and throw some vicious shots to Danny Garcia's body. So my question is, as it gets later in the fight and as Danny Garcia starts to gas out from the body shots, what's going to happen when he has less zip on those punches? Like, that's the only thing I see stopping Errol from just completely destroying Danny Garcia is early in the fight. Errol does have to, Errol does have to watch out for those counter shots because it's the shots you don't see that hurt you the most. Yes, we all know this. But as he loses zip inevitably from Errol working the body, then what's going to happen? Now, don't get me wrong. Danny Garcia is tough as nails. He's not just going to go in there and lay down. But I just think that Spence is on a completely different level than Danny Garcia. I think Spence and Crawford are in their own tier. I honestly would even put Shawn Porter in that tier as well, just because over the years, Shawn Porter has continued to get better. You know, he was always known as this guy who could only brawl. And then he started working on his boxing skills even more and started displaying them. Not to say he didn't have boxing skills in the past, which he did. He just never really displayed them during the fights because, you know, he's stronger than mostly everybody he goes against and more athletic. So he would just bully them. But as he moved up in competition, he had to start throwing more boxing in there in his fights. But for this fight, my prediction is I have Errol Spence. And I honestly, I'm trying not to let my Errol Spence bias kick in. I know Danny Garcia is tough because I honestly want to say Errol can stop Danny Garcia late in this fight. Another part of me is saying Errol by unanimous decision. But you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is going to be a big statement fight for Errol Spence. And I think that Errol Spence gets Danny Garcia out of there, I'll say in the 10th or the 11th round, and makes a huge statement, especially after the statement Terrence Crawford just made against Kell Brook. I know a lot of people don't want to give Bud his credit, but that was an impressive fight that Bud fought. So I think that's going to really make Errol want to try to get Danny Garcia out of there later in the fight. And I think if Errol works the body early on in the fight, that it's a good possibility of that happening. And the reason I say that is because Danny Garcia is a dog too. So he's going to be fighting back and he's not going to just lay down. But I just think those punches are going to really add up and take a toll on Danny Garcia. And yeah, I just don't see Danny Garcia winning this because, like I said earlier in the video, whenever he has to fight an elite fighter at the welterweight division, he comes up short. That's just what it is. So let me know what your thoughts are on the fight. Who do you have winning? And I think I'm going to do my first live stream tomorrow. So I'll be watching the fight and then I'll have a live stream if you all want to join to kind of talk about the fight as the fight is occurring. So don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Catch you on the next one. Peace.